Most people picture the Bible as a book that stays quiet about sex. Or worse, a book that only shows up to point a finger and say one word: no. But open it up and something strange happens. Sex is everywhere. It is in the very first chapter. It fills an entire poem. It shows up in laws, in warnings, in wild family stories, and in letters written to brand new churches. In fact, the Bible talks about it far more openly than most people who quote the Bible ever do. So how much does it really say? Is it all rules and punishment, or is there something else hiding in those pages? And why would an ancient religious book spend so much ink on the one topic everyone assumes it wants to avoid? Stay to the end, because the most surprising part is not a single verse. It is what all of them, put together, seem to be saying about you. Start where the Bible starts, the book of Genesis. Before there is a single rule about right and wrong, before there is a temple or a priest or a commandment, there is a man, a woman, and one short line: be fruitful and multiply. The very first instruction ever given to human beings is, in plain terms, an instruction to have children, which means an instruction to have sex. Then comes an even bolder line. Genesis says a man will leave his father and mother and hold on to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. That phrase, one flesh, is not just wedding talk. Ancient readers understood it to include the body. Two separate people becoming, in some real way, one. And the scene ends with a detail almost everyone reads right past. The man and the woman were both naked, and they felt no shame, no embarrassment, no hiding. In the Bible's own origin story, sex is not the villain. It is part of the design, and the design is called good. So if it opens this honestly, what happens when you keep turning pages? Because the family stories that come next are anything but clean. Keep reading Genesis and you meet people, not saints. Abraham sleeps with his wife's servant to get a son. His grandson Jacob ends up with 2 wives and their 2 maids, and the Bible tracks exactly who has which child. There is an entire chapter about a man named Judah and his daughter-in-law Tamar, and it does not look away from any of it. And it keeps going long after Genesis. King David, the most celebrated king in Israel's history, sees a woman named Bathsheba bathing, sleeps with her even though she is married to another man, and sets off a scandal that nearly tears his family apart. The Bible does not brag about it, but it does not bury it either. It records the whole affair, the cover-up, and the fallout in permanent ink. Even the hero does not get a pass. There is even a quiet, famous scene where a woman named Ruth slips onto a threshing floor at night and lies down at the feet of a man named Boaz. Readers have argued for centuries about exactly what happens there. The Bible leaves it charged, tense, and a little mysterious, on purpose. Here is the strange thing. The Bible does not hide these stories. It does not clean them up. It writes them down in detail, mess and all. This is not a book nervously avoiding the subject. This is a book that stares straight at it. But the biggest surprise is not a story. It is a book most people have never actually read. Tucked into the middle of the Bible is a book called the Song of Songs. Some people call it the Song of Solomon, and it is not a book of rules. It is a love poem, a long one. 2 lovers take turns describing each other. They talk about kisses, about longing, about wanting to be alone together away from everyone else. There is no war in it, no list of commandments. It never even uses the word sin. From beginning to end, it is a celebration of desire between 2 people who cannot stop thinking about each other. For hundreds of years, readers were so startled by it that many insisted it had to be a secret code. A hidden picture, they said, of God's love for his people. Maybe it is, but scholars point out the plain thing first. On the surface, it is unmistakably a poem about romantic, physical love, and it is sitting right there in the middle of the holy book. The Bible does not stop with poetry, either. The book of Proverbs warns a young man to stay away from the wrong woman, then, in almost the same breath, tells him to delight in his own wife. The book of Leviticus lists careful laws about who may and may not sleep together. Even the prophets use it. God tells the prophet Hosea to marry an unfaithful woman as a living, walking picture of what betrayal feels like. The prophet Ezekiel uses bold, uncomfortable images of unfaithfulness to describe a whole nation turning its back on God. Ancient Israel did not treat this as a subject too dirty to name. They wrote it into their law, their poetry, their wisdom, and their sermons. Which leads to a bigger question. All of that is the Old Testament. Does the tone finally change when you reach Jesus and the letters that follow? Because this is exactly where most people expect the door to slam shut. Here is where it gets interesting. Jesus does raise the bar. In his most famous sermon, he says that looking at someone with lust is already a kind of unfaithfulness inside the heart. At first, that sounds like the strictest line in the entire book. But look closer at what he is actually doing. He is not calling desire disgusting. He is calling it powerful. Powerful enough that what happens inside a person counts, not only what they do on the outside. You do not put a warning label on something weak. You put it on something strong. Then comes Paul. And Paul says things that would shock almost anyone who assumes the Bible is simply anti-sex. Writing to a church in a city called Corinth, Paul tells married couples not to keep away from each other. He treats intimacy inside marriage as something each partner actually owes the other. He even warns them not to stay apart for too long. This is not a man afraid of the topic. He puts it right in a letter he knows will be read out loud to an entire church. But Paul is not only cheering it on. In that same letter, he tells those readers to run from sexual sin and gives a startling reason. Your body, he writes, is a kind of temple, a sacred place, not a thing to be thrown around. And in another letter, he compares a husband and wife to Christ and the church, lifting marriage up as a picture of the deepest love he can imagine. So Paul does two things at once. He honors it, and he guards it. One more letter, written to a group called the Hebrews, adds a single blunt line. The marriage bed should be honored and kept pure, not treated as shameful, honored. Put it all together, and the New Testament is not slamming a door shut. It is building a fence. And people do not build fences around things they think are worthless. They build them around the things they are trying to protect. So step all the way back and look at the whole picture at once. Sex is in the first chapter of the Bible. It fills an entire poem in the middle. It runs through the family stories, the law, the wisdom books, the prophets, the words of Jesus, and the letters of Paul. That is not the track record of a book trying to dodge a subject. That is a book that keeps coming back to it, again and again, on purpose. And here is the part almost nobody notices. Across all of it, from the first page to the last letter, the Bible almost never treats sex as just physical. It keeps tying it to something bigger, to promises, to commitment, to two whole lives being joined together, one flesh, exactly like that line back in the very beginning. The warnings, the laws, even the strict words of Jesus, they are not there because the Bible thinks sex is bad. They are there because it thinks sex is enormous, strong enough to build a home on. Strong enough, if handled carelessly, to leave a scar. That is the real reason the Bible talks about sex more than you think. Not to shame it, to take it seriously, maybe more seriously than the world does today. So the next time someone tells you the Bible has nothing to say about sex, hand them the Song of Songs, and watch their face when they realize it was sitting there the whole time.